You're listening to Biz-Souls, the business podcast with an edge, hosted by me, Rona Lewis, and Jeffrey Hansler. Tune in for perspectives and discoveries about the changing world of business. It's time to connect to the heart, soul, and humor of how business gets done.
Welcome to Biz-Souls, where we get to the heart and soul of business and the people who make it happen.
That's what we tell people.
Hi, Rona.
Hi, Jeffrey.
Are we having fun?
We're always having fun.
Isn't there a song like that? Ain't we got fun? Something like that.
Please don't sing.
I'm gonna lose
We have to
the
do.
glasses.
We have to finish our sing podcast too. We have to do that.
Yes, we have
frightening.
a list of things to do.
Yes, we
things
have
that
a
are
list,
piled
so-
up. Yes, there's a pen around here somewhere. There's a
there
pen.
it is.
There we go.
So keep on coming back so you can see us sing. Yay, maybe.
Yeah,
Anyway,
sorry for the slow start here. We've got a special show for you. We're going to talk something. What are we talking about today?
We are
Something, near and dear.
it's love and money, baby. Workplace romance.
Workplace romance.
Woo-hoo! Workplace romance.
And
yeah.
why did we decide to talk about this, Rona?
Because with the world changing like it is, it's been questioned. Is it?
You mean
is
the
it
pandemic? People working at home, people separate from the people at work.
Is that
Things
what's
are changing.
going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, life as we know it is changing quickly, and we just started talking amongst ourselves about how much things change. In fact, they actually stay the same.
Right. Oh, well, that's true. And a special shout out to all those leaders out there that before the pandemic denied their employees working at home because you were worried about their production. So a special
He has been
hello
dying
to
to
you.
throw that in there for ages.
I think I throw it
talks
in
about
every
Every
session.
single time. So anyway, we are going to be talking about workplace romance.
Because we think
it's
conscious change would be
important.
good.
Absolutely. And we're going to seem like we're digressing, but we're really not, because, we're going to go over the history of work and society and organizations, and individuals. That's how we're going to split it up.
Correct.
And the fact is, so much of this is about how women are viewed in society.
Right, how women are viewed in work,
Mm-hmm.
and how men view men and women at work, and some of the changes that have gone
Right,
on.
and the choices that they have, and how they have much more power than they did, or do they?
Well, we don't know.
So-
We're going to find out. So we dug into things. We did a
We
little
did.
research.
We did, and we started way back in prehistoric times when Jeffrey was a child.
Yes, exactly. Raquel Welch and 2 million years BC.
Yeah, that was actually an awesome movie.
Yeah, very good. It was a great movie. And, gave you the impression that people were looking pretty sharp back then.
Because they were all able to sew fur bikinis.
Fur bikinis. And that was number one priority.
And had perfect teeth.
And
of
perfect
course.
teeth. Well, and the other thing we see about prehistoric times, and the reason we went back is because human beings are, mammals. We're animalistic, and our behaviors can be animalistic-like, and I assumed that back in the the
caveman
beginning days that we were even probably did more patterns that resembled animal kind
Yeah.
of nature. So
Well,
except from the Flintstones, they're dragging women around by their hair,
Because
and
that
they're
was a
carrying a big
takeoff.
club.
That was a prehistoric takeoff of the honeymooners.
Oh, very funny. Yes,
It
exactly.
kind of was,
It's exactly it.
So yeah, so if you stop to think about it, getting a little bit more serious, that was a time of tribes and polyamory, because they were just one step above the apes and things like that, and it was a survival thing, and it was all about the tribe as an organization, right?
Correct, and that's what as we were talking about doing this program, we started, how can we break things up? And so we thought, society's got a view of people at work and what should go on at work, and then organizations have their own view of what they want. It differs from different organizations. Then individuals have a perspective. So we thought we'd cover all three perspectives, except back then the society and the organization were the same. It was a
Right.
tribe. So the tribe was everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that, we actually did do research. We worked with a book called Sex at Dawn: The Prehistoric Origins of Modern Sexuality by Christopher Ryan, and I'm going to butcher this up, but I'm going to try, and Casilda Jetha. So hopefully I pronounced that right. That was published in 2010, and this book gave us a nice background on how it worked, and it wasn't about just the tribe and having babies. What drove it, Jeffrey?
No, really. So, we started to look at, workplace romance. I mean, you're working in the village, so what would workplace romance, and who would initiate it? And we were surprised to find, well, maybe we weren't surprised to find out women initiated it then. It was their biological clock that was workplace romance.
That's right, hormones, baby.
And who was the lucky fella when that happened, when those hormones kicked in?
Who knows? It was. I'm sure it was much the same as pheromones, things like that. And when the woman was ready, she was. I would assume she would just grunt, "You here."
Well, it wasn't just you here; it was everybody come here.
Yes, it was one at a
because
time.
They weren't partnered up. They
Yeah,
weren't,
I know.
there was no really kind of relationship. The relationship was very similar to animals, where I guess the king or the tough guy in the village got most of his choice, although they probably spread the gene pool around.
Well, especially if there were other tribes around, that they did a little.
Oh, maybe
mixing.
trade. We have like what was it? What was that movie with Daryl Hannah? She had blonde hair.
Was
but
it
he
Clan
also
of the
had dark-
Clan of the Cave Bear?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what they traded over differences,
Yeah.
or maybe somebody was taller, or somebody was heavier, or somebody was healthier.
Well, how did your parents do it? Because they were, around that time.
Yes, I know my parents. Yes, absolutely. No. My parents were lovely. Anyway, we
They were
don't
lovely, yeah.
don't digress on
Yeah.
that.
So
My mom was a Marine and my dad was a Marine. They met
were
in the
tough.
Marine Corps.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So
is
people
actually
say,
very
"Oh,
cool.
my dad was a Marine." Yes, my mom was, and she can kick your butt.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I know.
So, okay, so that's how they did it way back then. And then as time went by, things changed, because they went from hunter-gatherer to a more of an agricultural society.
Right. So that shifts. So hunter-gatherer, everybody's moving around, everybody's kind of milling around. Well, the minute you plant down and start, gardening or doing agriculture on some land.
How to skip millions of years in 2 minutes.
Yeah, garden. They were gardening. Anyway, they're kind of stuck in one spot, and so then it's kind of like we've got to have kids to do the work because there was no machinery. So then we need a woman to have the kids, and so they kind of partnered up that way.
Yeah. And I'm gonna quote something from the book. Monogamy and relationships are assumed a default in our world. They're not. They're a convenience formed once we became agricultural. So monogamy was convenient. It's like, maybe we should start to think, is it just a convenience now? But back then, it needed to be.
Yeah, and you know what? That will probably come back to that, because now in society, people are opening up and questioning a lot of things. This traditional, get married, stay with the same person for, it is, it's a wider discussion now. It's always gone on in certain groups. It's a wider discussion now on, what kind of relationship you're going to have, and how you're going to define yourself even.
Right.
So let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Going back to
agriculture, and as agriculture flourished at the same time, so did religion.
well, yes, it did, because people are stuck, so they needed rules. You probably had a king or a queen. You had a feudal system. You had a landowner. And the people that were working the land had to pay homage to the landowner, and the landowner probably wanted protection, and so they had all these rules. Religion is growing up.
Well, let's look at the Bible per se. And I know you know more about it. But, I went to Hebrew school when I was young, but that was kind of like prep for my bat mitzvah. Didn't you go to Catholic school?
No, I didn't go to
Oh,
Catholic
I thought you
school.
went to Catholic school.
No.
Rats!
No,
That shoots my whole thing.
I went to Sunday school.
Oh, Sunday school. Okay. And sex in the Bible was any of that was incredibly influential, especially back in the 1200s, 1300s, things like that.
Yeah, and over the course of my year, I've been to different Sunday schools, including I've been to Catholic school. The Baptists, though, they were really big on the sex is bad kind of thing.
Oh,
They kind of played that up, and so I expected that if you go through the Bible, and I read it 4 times looking for it, that they'd be talking about sex, and they really or like man marries woman or some tradition. They had a lot of begotten on stuff. Harry begot this and begot that. So obviously they were getting together.
they were just alluding to it.
Yeah, I know. Except, surprisingly, the Bible doesn't say anything about monogamy.
That's right. No, yeah, nowhere in the Bible does it prohibit multiple partners.
Yeah, and that was a little surprising. On the other hand, let me see, we've got Sodom and Gomorrah, which were trashed, and then Lot's wife looked back, and she was turned to a pillar of salt. And then Onus, kind of had intercourse to have a baby, disobeyed God.
I don't know who that is, but okay.
It's a guy
Is that a
disobeyed
New
God.
Testament
Well,
thing?
they wiped him out.
Okay.
No, that's Old Testament
Oh.
still.
It shows you
And,
how much studying for
Let
my
me
bus
say,
mitzvah guy.
Jezebel took down an entire kingdom by corrupting them. Samson and Delilah,
Right.
she took away your strength because, so
cut his hair.
there was an undercurrent that, sex is going to lead to bad
Sex is
things.
power.
Sex is going to lead to bad things, though.
Well, if you're into that kind of thing, it can. But in this case, it really, got people off of it. And through, I think most religions, I mean, it was sex is bad unless you were married and don't touch, and which made teenagers, I'm sure in any time were rebellious.
Well, and the culture of the United States was started by the Puritans,
That's
which
right.
was a religious group that hardly anybody could stand, which is why they got kicked
They
out.
they got
I mean,
kicked
they
out.
had
That's
some
right.
stringent, weird rules, and during the Middle Ages, I think men started to really grasp more power. Now, please, this is all out of context. I'm sure I'm going to get lots of stuff on it because I'm sure it had been going on for a while. Women were not allowed to an education. Women, the doctors got rid of the midwives, called them witches. The church wouldn't let women into the clergy or learn.
They were
So-
very scared of women.
Yeah, and it was
'Cause we're
almost
magic. Okay,
well, yeah, and maybe it was a way to make them feel better because I think they treated women as
It's chattel.
as assets. Yeah, they either were marrying them off, so they
Yeah, arranged marriages, for war's sake, I'll give you my kid if you don't attack us. So one country would get together with another country, and that didn't always work.
No, and then if not, you had to have a dowry, and so all of a sudden, how do we, it's like how do we polish a diamond or make a diamond look better in Tiffany's? Well, this diamond is unique. So I guess the uniqueness was like virginity, and that became a huge thing all of a sudden that somebody had to be a virgin. And the other thing in the Middle Ages is the art was focused on love, and all of a sudden love became a duty of marriage.
Cherubs, all that kind of thing. Well, I don't think I think they talked about love developing. I don't think that was a primary thing, for the upper echelon. For the peasants, I think, I can only assume it was kind of catch as catch can, and if there was somebody who was a widow, they just needed somebody to help take care of them.
Well, that was the other thing. It was practical to be with a partner, and you had different duties, you had different tendencies.
It was
for
an
things.
economic need.
Yeah, and I think that's what was primarily driving it. And then, so society, everybody, bowed down to the kings and the rulers and the queens. For the organization at that time was pretty much the kingdom
Right.
at that time, and then people had their little shops and jobs within that organization, and then individually these people, what they went through. I mean, I guess if the king or ruler wanted to take whatever they wanted, a daughter or a wife, they could. And then these guys were also, they had to go fight. They were
Knights.
yeah, they were pulled into the military to fight for this king's land and stuff. And so at that time, then they were given, one of the prizes was, you can rape and pillage.
Right.
So these guys, and all this stuff got carried over into our psyche, and I think it came to a lot of it came to the United States.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was pretty barbaric. And even when our country was started, in the late 1700s, it was still, I think the Civil War was a pretty barbaric war,
Oh,
overall.
absolutely, and it kind of that was about the first part of the Industrial Revolution
That's
or in
right.
the Civil War,
Yeah.
and here again we've got kind of an agricultural South.
Hmm.
So, and in the South, if you were,
A
part of
landowner.
a plantation, you're
Yeah.
the owners of the plantation. The women were, they bragged about not going in the sun. They bragged about not working. They bragged about doing delicate things. They bragged about their husband and their
Well,
wealth.
and we know what the Civil War was about and why. So a lot of times they didn't even have to. Whereas the Northerners, the women were a little bit more cosmopolitan. They still didn't go to work if their husbands had
No,
money.
they had money and stuff, except because things were being more. They'd go to a factory, go to a job there, and work there, or they might be, like the, even though it wasn't the United States, Bob Cratchit working for Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yeah.
You're just kind of a cog in their wheel, and then so now we've got society, and now we've got organizations, especially in the North.
Mm.
We've got organizations separating from society itself and having their own thing. And organizations cared about production.
Right.
They were going into scale.
Well, and now we're talking about the second half of the Industrial Revolution when it was a lot of production lines and the railroads were being built and
Late
late
1800s, early
1800s,
1900s.
exactly. And women were just starting to, they were trying to get the vote. They were shop girls, and they were still objectified.
Absolutely, you still had a dowry, you still had to marry the right people,
And
you still had all these morals, and
if they had money and got married, all the money went to the husband,
right.
which was horse pucky.
Well, I agree.
Just saying,
You
because
know,
it should be. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. So that's just a woman's point of view.
well, the pendulum swung, and you've got to remember society and organizations and individuals, we all have this like pendulum and it swings. So, back then it all went to the man and everything was for the men. And now you come to nowadays and, most of my experiences, Court, you're better off being the female side. They want to look
Well,
out for the kids, which they
But
should.
I'm not done talking about the Industrial Revolution because
No.
we really that was when it was kind of like enough is enough with the suffragettes, and the women worked for super low wages, and especially if you were an immigrant working on the
Sure.
lower east side, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in Greenwich Village.
Yeah,
That was
they locked
19.
the doors and blocked the stairways so
Right.
they would
They-
have to be productive.
Right. That was 1911.
Couldn't
And
steal.
lots of people died. And, they didn't have child labor laws back
Right.
then either. So 14-year-olds and like 63, but they were of all ages. And it was just, we were just used for the, the baser workings of business.
Right. And again, it's kind of that pendulum thing. So all the power was in the business
Right.
owners. And then with tragedies like that, society started to come in and say, hey, we should balance this. And then unions came up, which they could represent the workers and give them a voice. And
Unions.
part of that, and once people said, oh, a voice is important, then the suffragettes, they wanted to get the vote. And so
It was
they could have say. And again, these are things that carry forward. We still look for people to have a voice in how things are going on.
so
But
let's
we're kind of off a little bit, aren't we? From, I mean,
well, we are,
workplace
and
romance.
yeah. I mean, I don't know that. I don't know that it was prevalent. I'm sure it did happen because the robber barons, things like that, and the people who were Carnegie and whatever. I'm sure they had secretaries, and that ilk, and I don't know if they would have a choice if they were getting hit on, if they needed their job,
Oh, if you needed your job, it's just like nowadays where people come to this country, they're sneaking in, and the guys that are running them, they take
They
full
take
they take full
advantage of it.
advantage of them.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And it's people with power. It's that abuse of power that goes on
And
that
I think
really.
that has gone down throughout history, whether it was a king and the chambermaid,
Genghis
and,
Khan.
and having illegitimate children. Like he had like
Yeah,
143 kids or something like that, right?
yeah.
It was a lot. I don't know how he had time to do anything else. But anyway, so and then even up the power to today, presidents, etc., take advantage of everyone, from movie stars to PAs and
Yeah,
things
with
like that
everything going on
in
in
the
Hollywood.
actresses, and yeah, exactly. So
So a lot of these
that did not go away.
So a lot of these behaviors have almost been they've just gone on for a long time.
Hmm.
Not that they're right, not that they're
They just are.
justifiable. It's just that
Yeah.
they got on and people kind of accepted them as that's just what goes on.
Yeah, and if we move up to mid century and beyond, if you think of Mad Men, I was in advertising, and when I was selling, I wasn't on the creative side, but I was on the sales side. There was still a big glass ceiling, and oh, Rona's fairly attractive, so how smart can she be? And they just took things for granted, and they didn't take us very seriously, and it was a pain in the neck because most of the females were on the buying side, and I was on the sales side. So it was a big eye opener, when I got into business. Was it
Well,
like that when you were in business?
When I started with Apple, half the sales force was women.
Oh,
There
so it
was an
was.
office manager, she was
Mhm.
female. The accountant was female. One of the owners of the building and the operator, I mean, she was female. So it was kind of an even split that
Yeah.
we had. I didn't even think about it or notice it, except, Rona. I think pretty much everybody agrees, and from what we did in Encyclopedia Britannica and the other places we looked, men were dominant in the workforce
Mhm.
at that time, and women's roles were primarily support roles for men.
Except, and
Yeah.
I'm going backwards a little bit, World War II.
Well, in World War II, all the men were shipped off to war. So
Exactly. Rosie the Riveter.
the organizations, who had been saying no women, just like they were saying, oh, you can't work at home, you can't work at
I
home.
knew he would bring that up
All of a
again.
sudden now, women can now work in the factories,
Yeah,
and
and they were
did.
great at it.
Yeah, they really were good. And then when the war was over, then they were forced back in. Only they'd had a taste of freedom. They'd had a taste of that
Right.
accomplishment.
Right.
It's enjoyable to make things for a lot of people. I
Well,
don't.
and you feel productive. You feel
Right.
part of the bigger picture, just like what the younger kids want now when they work in a company. They want to know that what they do means something. These women knew that they were helping the war effort.
Right.
You know.
Well, yeah, and so again, it this is about the relationships of men and women in society, in an organization,
Right.
and as individuals, and all of these things have interplay for each other. Like one of the interesting things we found out was, key clubs, where you're swapping.
Key parties.
Yeah, key parties.
Yeah.
What was the guy? What was the guy's
Terry
book?
Gould.
Terry Gould. Terry Gould. He wrote a book, The Lifestyle: A Look at Erotic Rights of Swingers. And this came up on one of our searches, and supposedly, as the rumor goes, and it's been hard. There were comments that it's hard to verify all this stuff. We couldn't unverify it though. That the Air Force pilots, the fighter pilots, because their life expectancy was so short once they went overseas, that they started having swinger parties within their group. And the idea was the old, cave, prehistoric
yeah.
kind of relationship where it was their tribe was fighter pilots.
Oh.
And the idea is if a pilot got killed, the others in the group would take care of his partner and his kids.
Like a kibbutz where it's just all the kids are thrown together.
And where they're kind of, yeah, they
Yeah.
develop a community around that. And supposedly this continued into the Korean War, at which point it finally became kind of, it invaded the suburbs, probably with all the retiring people from World War II.
Well, there's a lot of retired people, and from what I've heard, I lived in Florida when I was married, and I played tennis and golf. I belonged to a club, a country club down there. And rumor had it, I can honestly say I've never taken part, but we were invited to some of those. So it is continued today. I think it's just more for fun, and I don't know. I guess boredom. If you have too much money, there's boredom. We weren't that wealthy. We never needed to
Right.
do that. And it's for a different thing, and it's interesting how these I don't know what you would call this, a rite of passage, but it's something that they did for a purpose, just kept going as a fun thing, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and even with that, in World War II, it was still not like the swinging '60s. That didn't come. After World War II was over, it gradually. The '50s were a time, still a time of, virgins and sluts sort of thing.
Well, by society standards, not necessarily within different organizations.
Yes,
Like, for example,
absolutely.
the organization of movies. In the organization of, oh, that was a cat.
That was
a cat food dropping. All right. Hollywood
organizations,
is
yeah.
notorious
That's right.
for
Casting couch.
casting couch and those things, and it was kind of, and it was a little looser because, and part of it was, it's like we were watching with film. As soon as film came out, they started doing nude video. They started trying to make it art. How do they get around it? How could they get by and show
Well,
different
and
things?
Europe was a lot more progressive than the United States. It's that Puritan thing again.
Well, and again, the United States has been a little isolated.
Yeah.
Until World War I, and then World War II, people started going back to Europe, and people that had never stepped foot on, true people that had been here for a couple of generations are now going back, and they see that things are differently, and I'm sure that impacted them.
I can
how
only
people
imagine.
treat
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So all these psyches, from changing roles of society, the changing roles of organizations, the changing roles of individuals, all these psyches are coming together. And like you said, the '60s, free love because of the pill.
There's that
you
pendulum thing
couldn't get-
again. It's starting to swing back, and women were taken back, and their power, and you had Woodstock, and it was the younger generation always fights against their parents and stuff. So they saw the 50s as 40s and 50s as being very constrictive. So what's the next step? You go the other way.
Right. And then in the '80s, partly unfortunately because of AIDS, the conversation of different relationships. So you've got gay relationships, and people were coming more out about it. And it's not something you would necessarily have done before, where you talk about a gay relationship at work, because that could get you terminated immediately.
Right. Right.
And then there was such a God making AIDS the gay plague.
Right.
Again, that sets off the pendulum swinging, where we have to really, everybody can be different, and they have rights. I mean, going back to the Constitution, they have rights and they should be protected. And then the voice for the different workers, and that was through courts and through laws and through non-discrimination
even with
acts.
when Anita Hill was in the '80s or the '90s. When did she go?
I think that was the '80s.
The '80s, yeah, and
90s.
so all that. I mean, that just shows that how higher ups, the more important the people are, especially men, they feel like they can do and say anything, and women were kind of like, yeah, not anymore. Enough is enough. And even in the 70s with Gloria Steinem on one side and Phyllis Schlafly on the other. If I think it's on HBO, it's either on Netflix or HBO. It's called Mrs. America, and it was that fight for women's rights, or women from the Midwest and small towns wanting to have conservative voices. And now, understand, Jeffrey and I are not judging in any way. You are allowed to have your beliefs, and that was the fight that society has, and I think a lot of it still goes on, and it bleeds into the workplace.
Absolutely. All of these things affect it. I mean, back in the 60s and 70s, my guess is probably if there was a workplace romance, it was a woman that was it was a woman that was asked to leave, not the man. Sometimes it might be both. Maybe it was the man. Who knows? So, in a way, there wasn't a protection, and organizations, like so often do, they don't really deal with it. Oh, we need to focus on profits, and we're not going to deal with the human side because we don't have a clear answer on this.
Well, and back then it was really under the table. It was mostly having affairs with married men, things like that. Most women did not have affairs, from what I understand, from what I've been reading. It was more of the men who were naughty at the office.
And the thing is, we don't know that. How much,
That's true. There isn't a lot of, if they kept it under the table, it's not like they
it's
wrote
not-
it down.
It's not like they put it on their census. So yeah, I've been cheating on my
Dear
spouse or
diary.
something. So you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a friend of mine, and her, unfortunately, her husband cheated on her, and so what did she do? Tit for tat? She was on a business meeting, and she hooked up with somebody and cheated right back at him. It was kind of like, I'm going to get you back. They broke up, obviously, soon after there, or maybe not, obviously. Maybe they shouldn't have broken up.
Well, you knew about it, so.
Well, I knew about it after the fact. It was just a story that they had told.
Well, so let's talk. You want to talk about now? What's going on now?
Yeah, so we've been kind of going over men with relationships and looking at society and the organization,
Well,
the
yeah.
individual, and so let's talk about where we are now. Where are we, society?
The Me Too,
society, the Me Too.
And even with the gymnasts and narking on their
Right.
and well-deserved narking on their team doctors, things like that.
Absolutely.
Surprisingly, according to the Society for Human Resource Management, things really haven't changed in terms of dating in organizations. We did research on the rules that organizations have,
Okay.
if they have rules. You
Okay,
want to go back again?
so wait. Society. So what you're saying is society is now, we've got Me Too.
Yeah.
We're changing the dialogue. We're talking about pronouns, and we're talking about transgender. We're bringing this stuff, or we're re-looking at things, including bathrooms,
Yeah.
including sports.
So it's just
NCAAs.
humans. Yeah, humans being attracted to humans.
So society. Okay, now you want to jump to organization.
I do.
And okay.
Thank you for making that clear.
Okay.
This is why we do this, because Rona has this kind of logic. I
thought it was great. I was just catching up.
That's fine. No. So, according to the Society for Human Resource Management, of the people who dated someone at work, 76% have dated a peer, 27% have dated a superior, 21% have dated a subordinate. And wait, I have more. Almost 65% have kept it a secret. And this is not just like in the last 10 years. This is for, an average. 18% had random hookups, and 72% of people who have been dating, or who have dated or had a relationship at the workplace would have another one.
So on a personal level, they like what's going on. It's exciting. It's is it a distraction though from work?
I think it absolutely can be. Full disclosure, when I was in corporate, I dated a guy who was at the same company. He was in a different department, and we met playing softball. So, I was in sales. He was in research, I think he was. He was either in research or in creative. I don't even remember. And we had fun, and and when we broke up, I was kind of pissed off. He broke up with me, and I didn't really see him, so it wasn't a big thing. And it's not like I didn't really tell anyone, and neither did he.
So it
So
wasn't a kept secret, and still was a
we just,
secret. You
yeah, I
just
mean, it
didn't
was
talk about it.
exactly.
Why didn't you talk about it? What were your instincts?
My instincts were, well, first of all, I didn't want people asking me, so how's it going with, John, or, whatever. I just didn't, and we were not like such a steady thing that if someone else asked me out, I wouldn't have gone. We weren't boyfriend and girlfriend. And um, it was just one of those things where my gut told me, just don't talk about it.
Right. So
Don't
what,
ask,
how
don't tell, sort of thing.
so how'd you get together? Was it just convenience, or was it proximity, or what's
Yeah,
going
we
on?
both lived on the Upper West Side in New
Okay.
York. A whole bunch of us went, we would go out for chicken wings and beers after softball was over. We know we had stuff in common, and that's, according to what we've looked up, our research, that's what attracts people more so than anything else. It's being in proximity. Plus the fact that I knew the guy had a job and he most probably wasn't a serial killer.
Well, yeah, that's true. You've got a little safety with somebody at work. I mean, because nowadays you've got all kinds of dating sites. You can go on dating sites. You can meet people from all over. Yes, there are a lot of fake profiles. There's a lot of there. It's not. You don't. I don't know.
Well, and you
Maybe
know what?
it is. People want to feel safe, and maybe that proximity thing. Besides, you get to see them. Plus, it makes it a little fun working with somebody.
Exactly. You get excited about seeing them during the day, and that makes you want to go to work. And it can make you more creative. It could make you more confident when you're at work, which is all a good thing, except if it doesn't work out, in which case, as if anybody's listening or watching who's in HR, there are legal issues, there are retention issues, it's all emotion, and hell hath no fury, you know.
So we've got society changing the way they're looking at things,
Hmm.
and they're not exactly sure how to do it. And then we had individuals who've been kind of opening up and
Hmm.
changing things. And the laggard is the organization then again. If it's lagging behind, and it's lagging behind because of conservatism, because of they're interested in production,
Right, they
because they
want the,
don't.
the bottom line, and they don't want to deal with the drama.
When people are happy and when people are together, if they're enjoying themselves, they're really happy. Production skyrockets.
Right.
People are very effective, and when people are enjoying their time and having a good experience, they do better work.
And yeah, and a lot of companies are starting to have policies where if two people are dating, they have to let HR know that they
Well,
are.
and that makes sense because to me, if you have to keep it a secret from the organization, now you're keeping a secret from the organization. Secrets always come out, first
Right.
of all.
Right.
And that's counter to transparency. And what we'd like to do is we'd like organizations to be a safe place where you can have transparency. And that would mean transparency if you're going to have a workplace romance and you're willing to suffer the consequences, which one of the consequences people don't think about. If you have a workplace romance, you've invited work into your relationship. You've invited
That's
HR
true.
into your relationship. They're going to have some
It's a party.
say. Well, organizations, they still, the big ones still like to move people around to
Right.
different places for
That's right.
different experiences.
And this is a really fun fact that I just found out. With the pandemic and people working from home and hybrid, people are actually connecting more and dating, which is weird because you would think that if they're isolated, it would be less. And humans are built for connection. We are social animals, and because of the isolation, they were talking to each other more. And whether it was through Slack or Zoom or whatever methods it is, they were actually they were actually happy to find someone that they had something in common with, and like you said, they were having fun with it, and enjoying their times again. So more people hooking up is not the right word, or getting into
Connecting.
relation. Thank you. Connecting. Yes.
Yeah, connecting.
That's a better
And
word.
you know, that makes perfect sense to me because you never go shopping when you're hungry. You're just going to buy everything in the store. So if you're hungry for relationships and then you go to a meeting after and you see people at work.
You're just desperate.
Yeah, you're desperate. Your brain's been screaming at you, I need people.
Right. Right. Talk to me. Can I just touch your hair? Just something.
Okay.
Something. Just let me show you a
HR, quick. I'm being harassed. Have you ever been chased at work? Where you said you had a relationship, but were you ever chased at work?
Sort of. Yeah. When my first, it was my first job. I think I was 20, 21, 22. I was a sales assistant at a media rep firm, and I will not mention the name. I don't even think it's a business anymore. And the owner was like your size. It's like 6'4", Marlboro man, came from somewhere out west originally, wore cowboy hats, had a mustache, and this was the 80s, so it was like,
Oh, mustaches were cool in the
it
80s.
was cool in the 80s,
God,
and he
those-
was
those are
actually
such
very
bad mustaches.
very good looking, and he was. As they say in Seinfeld, or at least with me, he was a very close talker. And if I stand really straight and I fluff my hair up, I'm 5'5", and so with heels, maybe I was 5'7". So I had to literally look up to him, and he was just very always just saying.
So you've said a lot of things. Did anything happen? I'm really.
Once. So something almost happened, and he was a little bit drunk, and he had a drink. He was kind of a
Right.
lot drunk, and it was at the Christmas party.
Right.
And so he leaned over me, and he started to just say things that were rather inappropriate, and kept leaning over until his drink spilled all over the front of my dress.
Oh no. Oh no.
So that kind of gave me the excuse to take a step back. And so that was the Christmas party was on a Friday.
Yeah.
And, obviously people noticed, so he wasn't able to continue that. And so I was able to leave the party, and I brought my clothes to the cleaners, and I came in and I was like, I walked into him. I walked right past his secretary, and I said, "You need to sign for this for petty cash." And he was
Right.
not, and he was embarrassed. And he was, "What's this?" I said, "It's my cleaning bill from the dress you spilled at the Christmas party." He's like, "Okay,"
Okay.
and yeah,
And that's how it was ended.
that was it.
Do you think it'd go that way today with the current environment? Would two people sort it out, or are they immediately going to throw up the flag and call?
If
and
that
start
happened to
screaming
me,
at HR?
it was the owner of the company, and I'm not nearly as insecure. I just graduated college.
Right.
It was my first job, and this was
Right.
the owner of the frickin' company.
Right.
If I was the way I am now, back then it wouldn't even gotten this far.
So you would have checked him on it.
I would either have checked him or made him buy me a lot of expensive things. So I'm kidding. I would not have done that.
Yeah, early in my career, I got hit on by a supervisor, and she was, she was very open, very direct about it. It was great. It was enjoyable to get out of work and go to lunch.
A long lunch?
Nothing. It was a longer lunch. Nothing really happened. We just talked, and most of the talk was about work. It was very exciting about work, and
But did it ever get physical?
no, never got physical. Never went that way, which is a good thing. Sometimes, that was a good thing. I think because in the end, she actually, where I was kind of moving around in the organization and going up, she was kind of not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think there was some resentment there.
That could- absolutely,
young
absolutely.
kid kind of coming up in the
So yeah, I
organization.
mean, for all this, obviously, in my opinion, bottom line, I don't think first of all, I don't think it's possible to stop people from being attracted to each other.
Oh, absolutely not.
And so I think companies can do smart things to protect themselves, but this isn't gonna stop. It's the way people meet each other. I mean, I've also, in later years, dated clients. You meet people at networking events. It's gonna happen. So while I think it's smart that companies are aware, I think all companies need to have policies in place and stick to them. What do you think?
Well, they do have to have policy. They have to. I think they need to look at them again, though. So for me, if you're going, so right now, if you're going to forbid workplace romance, that's a policy. I don't know if it's been tested, whether that's legal. This is where we couldn't get a lot on definitive on this.
Right.
So having a legal agreement, it should be promoted that people come up if they're going to have a romance, they announce it. What do you call it? The love
Oh,
contract?
well, I read about this love contract that basically it's a contract for people who are dating each other, and it says, full disclosure, full transparency, and I go into this with my eyes open and with all willingness, so that they can't, say, he forced me, or whatever, or she forced me, for that matter, or they forced
Right.
me. I got to use all the pronouns.
Yeah, exactly. So the only trouble with that is contracts are well meaning. They don't encompass everything that goes on.
Yeah.
And what if somebody goes psycho and goes crazy,
I
and
don't know.
then decides to take their love interest out at work and involve other people?
Look, there's people who go postal every day, and you can't necessarily. And forgive me, if there are any postal workers. No offense to you, but that's, there are people who get a little nuts. Who will stalk.
Well, and again, it's not what the organization's about. The organization wants to be productive. It wants to make good products and services.
They have to protect themselves, right?
The reason we think this is going to be a conversation that's going to have to be up in the forefront, though, is because with people on flex work and working more at home and work, and as a matter of fact, one of the authors, let me see if I can find the notes on it. One of the authors, she's done a lot of stuff, and Esther Perel, and she did a. She's got some stuff on relationship skills and workplace, and one of the things she says is she said, love language, the romance language, is being brought into the workforce, that we don't want people to like their job. We want them to love their job. Well, the minute you are introducing and saying love at work is okay for the product, you can't control people. They are going to start, those emotions and those feelings and that engagement are going to come out. I know when people get creative and passionate, you feel great. When people win and do something well, they get this rush, and then they have a party, and then the alcohol gets flowing.
Right.
Or in California and a few other states, they start smoking some stuff.
That's right.
Next thing you know, there's a lot of amorous behavior going on.
Well, and I know how I feel like, when we do when I do a keynote, when you do a keynote, it's exciting, and it's like when you get a contract signed.
Yeah.
That's
very exciting.
It can be of that emotional rush.
Yeah, it can be a giant stimulus.
It can, let's just call it what it is. It can be a great turn on.
Well, and then on the other end, we're going through change now. People are beginning to look at things at an organization and change things. And when change goes on, people don't feel secure.
Yeah.
And fear is a driving force for a lot of bad behaviors
Absolutely.
at work. And, especially when the Me Too thing came out, man, everybody and their son was accusing everybody else. And just accusing somebody could actually trash their career, whether it's substantiated or not.
Yeah.
And people took advantage of that.
Which is a shame, because, I'm all for it, and people seem to have lost their sense of humor too. There's no flirting, which is absolutely a natural thing for people to do, So for me, it's, where do you draw the line?
Yes. There's no even false flirtings, as Billy Crystal
Right,
says.
false
No
flirting.
false flirting. Don't any false flirtings.
Yeah. So
going
it's
on.
it's a shame, because We can be who we want to be. In For me, even now, when I do business with people and we start to get to know each other, that just kind of trickles in, and we know not to take it too far. You have to trust people, you know.
So, do we have any real solid advice for anyone other than look? Look. You have to understand that when you have a workplace romance, you're inviting the organization into your relationship. That would be one thing. So you're inviting a third party into the relationship.
Yeah.
And they have their own interests. The organization has its interests. It wants production to go well. And if things don't go well, you could have a double whammy with the work having to decide that there's conflict or there's a problem or there's tension that they can't deal with. And they may ask for changes that you didn't want and wouldn't have happened had you not been involved in a romance there.
Yeah, for me, you really have to go in as much with your head as with your heart. Take a step back and say, if I go into this, what are the repercussions if? What if? Just what if the heck out of it? Well, and then, and then start being transparent with if this is what you want to do. If you see, I'm a romantic at heart, and I always want everybody to be happy. So the heart sometimes wants what the heart wants. And is it worth it? And you have to use your emotional intelligence to say, just because your heart wants it. That's why most young women were attracted to the bad boys, because that's exciting. And as we get older, we realize that the nice guys, are the ones with the stable jobs and the house and the car and stuff like that. So it's
not
just,
that's what she's interested in a relationship for. The car.
Do you have a job? So anyway, so my point is, open your heart and open your mind as well to what might happen. That's my story.
Yeah.
That's our story.
Yeah, it is. And we are in agreement that this is going to come up more, partly because people have been denied contact with other human beings. And so they're going to be hungry. And they're going to be hungry for relationships. And so this is going to be a subject that's going to come up.
It'll be interesting to see after the pandemic is over, if there is a baby boom.
And my recommendation is that HR really give some thought to this and talk to the psychologist and maybe rewrite company policies and focus on safety, a positive impact on the relationship, and supporting people's lives in general. Can
I just put one more interesting fact that we keep talking about HR, and this just kind of blew my mind. A recent study found that people who work in human resources were the most likely to engage in office affairs.
Well, maybe they're doing company research.
It's their job to know everybody, and so there's more interaction with the whole company. So they get their pick of the litter. I just thought, like, that's awesome. I'm going to go to HR now.
Excuse me, I'm taking lunch. I'm going to a research project. Well, HR, keep those cards and letters coming, and tell us about your experiences. We'll have you as our guest on our next show.
Yeah, we are not all the time perfectly okay. Anyway, that's our story. All right. Anything else, Jeffrey?
I haven't. We haven't given you any direct answers. Hopefully, we just got your brains whirling on this thing, and we'll see how things come up. And remember, never say never, and never say never die, and
that's right.
Never say somebody can't work at home,
and
be more productive.
That's 3. Third time's a charm. On that note, if you have an opinion on this, let us know. Write to us. We'll share it on another podcast.
Absolutely.
All right. I think that is it for us. Thank you so much for listening to Biz-Souls. I'm Rona Lewis.
And I'm Jeffrey Hansler.
We'll see you later.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Biz-Souls podcast with your hosts, Rona Lewis and Jeffrey Hansler. Did you have fun? Subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Talk to you next week.